Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Free Legal Advice Show on British Muslim TV. I'm your host, Ilyas Bulbulia, and I'll be with you for the next hour. As our regular viewers are aware, the Free Legal Advice Show provides you, our viewers, the opportunity to call in and ask us any questions that you have on any aspect of English law. On this show, I should be able to cover a vast, diverse range of matters. Matters ranging from immigration law matters, family law matters, criminal law matters. So whatever your questions are, as long as they relate to the English legal system, I should be able to address them live on air. Two ways you can get in touch with us. One is the landline number, which appears at the bottom of the screen. Standard charges apply for that. Alternatively, you can send us a text message or a WhatsApp message on the mobile number that appears at the bottom of the screen. The message will be sent through to me here live in the studio, and I'll be able to deal with your questions and your queries that you send through to me. A couple of very minor points before we get going. Obviously, it's a live show, so I'm not able to take very detailed information from viewers who call in. If it transpires that your matter is quite complex, and I need to have a more thorough discussion with you, I need to go through your information in a lot of detail, then I'll ask you to leave your number with the control room, and then I will give you a ring off air. Likewise, if I need to look at your documents before I can advise you, sometimes it happens that you've received a letter and you need advice on that, or you've received a refusal decision and it's set out in a document and you want me to look at that. If it's the case that I need to look at your documents, or as I said before, your matter is quite complex, then I will arrange to speak to you off air. I'll look at your documents and have a more thorough discussion with you off air. And again, this is a service that we provide as part of the Free Legal Advice Show, for which there is no charge whatsoever. So do feel free to get in touch with us on the landline number or the mobile number at the bottom of the screen, and hopefully I will be able to deal with any questions or queries that you have. As always, we have a number of questions coming in on WhatsApp. So let's deal with some of the WhatsApp questions. But as always, please do continue to give us a ring, or to continue to send us your questions on the mobile number. Right. First question that's come in relates to the TB certificate. And let me just read the question out, and then we can address that in detail. Assalamu alaikum. My wife is applying for a spouse visa from Pakistan. I understand that she needs to submit a TB certificate. Is there an expiry date for the TB certificate? Likewise, as far as the English certificate is concerned, as part of the spouse application, is there an expiry date on that? In practice, this is a common question when you're dealing with immigration law matters, and in particular, how you can sponsor a spouse to come to the United Kingdom. Obviously, in previous shows, we've gone through this in a lot of detail. There are certain requirements which need to be fulfilled in order to sponsor your partner to come to the United Kingdom. Now, one of those requirements relates to submitting a medical certificate, and the other relates to submitting an English certificate from abroad. So these are certificates which are obtained from abroad, and both of them have a specific reason behind them, and both of them have an expiry date, if we can refer to it as that. So the question specifically is to do with these certificates which are normally obtained from abroad and submitted as part of a spouse application. But the question is there an expiry date? Now, understandable, because when someone is preparing a spouse application, they start getting the documents ready. Some people, well prepared, they may do it well in advance. So the question always is that if you do it well in advance, when you actually come to apply many weeks or months down the line, those documents that you've obtained, will they still be valid? Will they be within the validity period? So it's understandable that these questions arise. To make it more complex, every document, or the majority of the documents you submit as part of a spouse application, the majority of them have some kind of time limit attached to them. There's a period after which they're considered as having expired or been outdated and can't be relied upon. Specifically, in relation to the TB certificate, a TB certificate is only valid for 6 months. So if your husband or wife is applying to come to the UK, you have to ensure that the TB test which is done, the certificate which is issued, it's used as part of the spouse application within 6 months. You can't use it 7 months down the line, 8 months down the line. It must be valid and it must be done, must be used within the validity period, which is 6 months. Now, to make matters complex, as I said before, most of the documents you're using for a spouse application will have different time limits. So on the TB test front, relatively straightforward, the certificate is valid for 6 months. What the question being posed to us, requested advice on, was also the English certificate. Now, the English certificate, I'll go into a bit of detail regarding that, but as far as the validity period of that is concerned, that's 2 years. So on the one hand, you've got the TB certificate valid for 6 months, but the English certificate has a much longer validity period. That's valid for 2 years. So easy to confuse things, easy to think, the English certificate is valid for 2 years. The TB certificate must be valid for a longer period. But there is a big difference. One's valid only for 6 months, the other is valid for 2 years. Now, our viewers will be aware, as far as the English certificate is concerned, this was a requirement introduced many, many years ago for spouses coming to the United Kingdom. The idea behind that was that those who come to the United Kingdom, understandable, should have some command of English before they come to the UK. The idea being that if they have a reasonable command of English, it'll be easier, one, for them to increase their English speaking ability as time goes on. They'll be able to integrate more into society here. So those were the aims behind it, and you can sort of understand, and you can see the benefits of that now that we've had this policy in place for a number of years. You've got spouses coming here with a basic command of English, and as they progress through the journey from having got entry clearance, applied for an extension of their visa, applied for indefinite leave to remain, at each stage the English requirement has become stricter and they've had to demonstrate a better ability of a better command of English as they progressed down that journey towards indefinite leave to remain. And at the end, after 5 years, when they're applying for indefinite leave to remain, you have to be at a stage where you're able to have a reasonable conversation in English. So it's not a basic level, and neither is it one where your English has to be absolutely fluent at the standards that a native English speaker would be speaking at. It's not that level. It's somewhere in between. And you see the benefit now of this scheme that was introduced about English being a requirement from the outset. You see those who are in the UK, after 5 years, they've reached a stage where they are able to speak reasonably fluently. And they've had to learn, and it's an absolute benefit for them. So you can see the benefit of that. So going back to the question, there is a requirement that at the entry clearance stage, you have to pass an English test at A1 level, which at that stage, it's the most basic level possible. And that has with it an expiry date of 2 years. So there's a lot of time there in order to use that certificate. So when I deal with spouse applications in practice, I always say to clients, well, you know what, you know that a few months down the line, your partner who's abroad will be making a spouse application. Let them start the doing the English test. If they need to go on a course, you might as well start that now. Get that out of the way. Even if you do that now and you apply 7-8 months down the line, it's not a problem, because it has a significant a validity period. So get the English done straight away. In practice, that's what I normally advise. When it comes to the TB test, obviously it has a shorter validity period. So what I tend to advise clients is that for that, you should wait until closer to the time that you're submitting the application. There's no point doing the TB test now and then not being ready in 6 months' time. So you might as well get the English test done, but as far as the TB test is concerned, just wait until you're about to apply. Now, in my experience, in terms of getting a date for the TB test to be done, in most cases, you should be able to get a date at the clinic, the approved clinic, within around 2 to 3 weeks tops. So it's not difficult to get these two tests. And even as far as the English test is concerned, even with the current situation where there may be limited slots to take these tests, even then, in my experience, most people are able to get a slot to do even the English test within about 2 to 3 weeks. So look, that's the case as far as validity periods are concerned. Now, as I said at the outset, most of the documents that you are submitting for spouse applications do have some kind of time limit attached to it. We've looked at the TB test and the English test. What we'll do later on is look at what you come across in practice, which is how the financial requirement has to be met when you sponsor your husband or wife to come to the United Kingdom. We will look at what kind of documents you need to submit, and in particular, we will look at the validity periods for that. Because the vast majority of refusals that you see as far as spouse applications are concerned, it's not because people aren't earning enough money, etc., or not because it's not genuine. It's because there's a problem with their documents, and in particular, because a lot of the documents which have been submitted, they're outdated. So we'll look at that in greater detail later on. We're taking a short break. We should be back in the next couple of minutes. See you then. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Free Legal Advice Show on British Muslim TV. I'm your host, Ilyas Bulbulia. To speak to me live on air, please ring on the landline number that appears at the bottom of the screen. Alternatively, there's a mobile number there, and you can send me a WhatsApp message or a text message on that mobile number. To speak to me live, please call on the landline number and messages on the mobile number. Any messages you send will be sent through to me here live in the studios, and I'll be able to address those questions. Now, had a number of questions coming in on immigration law matters, so let me turn to that. Fantastic that we've got WhatsApp questions coming in, but by all means do feel free to give me a ring live on air. Now, next question that's come in relates to somebody currently here in the United Kingdom on a student visa, a Tier 4 visa, who wants to transfer to a skilled worker visa. Now, the issue here is this. What the viewer is saying is that my student visa is due to expire within the next couple of days. My current employer has applied for a sponsor license so that I can transfer my visa to a skilled worker visa. However, the license application has still not been approved. What can I do? My visa is due to expire. Common question actually for students who are in the United Kingdom, students who have finished their course or they're about to finish their course. And what they are obviously looking at is moving on from their current Tier 4 or student visa and moving on from that into a skilled worker visa, because that ultimately leads to permanent settlement, indefinite leave to remain in the United Kingdom. So that's the whole idea behind it, that you're a student, maybe you've done your bachelor's degree, maybe you've done your master's degree, now you want to work in the United Kingdom, ultimately get indefinite leave to remain. So what you're really looking at is an employer who is able to sponsor you in the United Kingdom. Now, the difficulty I come across regularly in practice is this, that students only look at the possibility of sponsoring towards the end. So the problem is they only look at getting a skilled worker visa, looking for an employer who has a sponsor license, very much towards the end, where you've got 4 or 5 weeks left before their student visa is about to expire. They're panicking, they're trying to work out which visa can we now go into, and they're speaking to the employer saying, yes, okay, I'll assist you. Right, what do we do? The problem is, at that stage, you've only got a few weeks left before the visa is going to expire. And there's a fair amount of work that needs to be done before somebody can actually transfer from their student visa to a skilled worker visa. And there isn't enough time to do it. What can you do in that situation? Well, the key thing you need to remember is this, that whatever you do, you have to ensure that you don't let your visa expire. If your visa expires, then you are in difficulty. So you must ensure that you make an application to the Home Office before your current visa expires. That's the only way you remain legal in the United Kingdom. So, for example, let's say you are coming towards the end of the student visa like we have here. The license application for your employer in order to sponsor you as a skilled worker hasn't come through. So we can't rely on a skilled worker visa at that stage. That isn't a possibility. What you could do is make an application to the Home Office and say to the Home Office that, look, my sponsor is applying for a sponsor license and I'm going to be taken on as a skilled worker, and I basically need time, a bit of time for these things to be done. And that's the basis of the application. Now, the problem is this, that kind of application will not be approved by the Home Office. The Home Office take a very strict view with applications. Generally speaking, any application that you submit has to fall within the immigration rules, whether it's the skilled worker scheme, student scheme, spouse scheme, whatever it is. It's got to fall within the scheme. And when you say to the Home Office with this application that, you know what, it doesn't fall within any of the schemes, I simply need a bit more time in order for me to make an application which fits within the skilled worker scheme, I need time, and that's what I'm applying for. The view that the Home Office will take is to say, look, it's an application outside the rules. There's nothing that prevents you from returning to your home country. And once your employer, potential employer, has a sponsor license, there's nothing that prevents you from coming back from your home country. So there's no reason why, in your case, there are no exceptional circumstances here. There's no reason why we should grant you a visa for your employer to sort out their sponsor license. So that's the approach that the Home Office will take. But the reality is, the reason why you ask for this time is that by asking for more time, it may take the Home Office 3 or 4 months or even longer to process your application. Whilst your application is being processed, it's hoped that your employer would have got the sponsor license by then, because normally to get the sponsor license takes just under 2 months. To do the other steps of actually assigning a certificate of sponsorship to you or taking you on as a skilled worker, that takes another couple of months. So all in all, you do need about 3 to 4 months. So what this application that you make to the Home Office just before your student visa expires, and when you ask for more time, what it does give you more time. It gives you these months that you need. Typically, the Home Office may take 4, 5, 6 months to process the application. And it's at that time, what you're doing is progressing your sponsor license application, progressing the other bits that need to be done for you to be sponsored as a skilled worker. So you've got 2 things running at the same time in parallel to each other. And what's hoped with applicants who are in this situation, with clients who are in this situation, is whilst one application is pending, you will sort out what needs to be sorted out with the employer sponsor license, and you've been taken on as a skilled worker. And once that's done, once you're taken on as a skilled worker, you simply switch or you go back to the Home Office and say, look, I've got this application pending and now want to go into the skilled worker category. So that's how it's done. Okay, let's take the next call for the day. Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Hello. Hello.
Hello, yes.
Hello, hi, I can hear you. Thank you for calling. What's your question?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, sir. I need information regarding investor visa, investment visa.
I understand. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I'm calling from London. My name is Javed Alvi.
Okay.
And I need information about how to apply the investor visa because I had only 50,000 pounds.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now, the difficulty is that there are visas where you want to start a new business, and you've got the starter visa and you have the innovator visa. So these aren't investor visas. Investor visas are completely different. Investor visas are where you have a lot of money to invest, and the current amount is £2 million to invest. So what's the total sum you've got? Is it, I think you said, is it £50,000? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, so the total amount you have to invest, did you say it's £50,000?
Yeah, 50. People say only you invest 50,000 pounds, you take the business plan and...
Yeah. So the name of that visa is the innovator visa.
Yeah,
so,
50.
Yeah, 50.
50,000 British pound, you send a business plan, and you provide a job at least 3 people.
So the difficulty is that there used to be a visa called the entrepreneur visa. So we don't have that anymore. We do have an innovator visa.
And after 2 years, they are happy. They give you
an extension of that visa. The only problem with that visa is that they are very strict on the business plan. So the business that you're proposing to start has to be innovative, scalable. So they're quite strict as far as the criteria is concerned as to what's acceptable as a business. That's where the difficulty is. So the sum of money, the £50,000, that's fine. That's enough. The focus is really on the business that you want to develop in the establish and develop in the United Kingdom. Now, that business has to be one which is approved by an external organization. That's where the difficulty is. What kind of business do you have in mind? If you're still there, what kind of business do you have in mind? I think a bit difficult to hear you, but that's where the focus is. The money is fine. The £50,000 is fine. So what the Home Office has done is taken the emphasis off the investment sum. So previously, when you had the entrepreneur visa, you needed to have normally £200,000 to invest. Now they've reduced it to £50,000. So the emphasis is no longer on the amount of money that you're putting into the business. The emphasis now is on the type of business that you want to establish in the United Kingdom. And that's where the real difficulty is. You really need an innovative, scalable business. And if you look at the external organizations which effectively validate and approve these plans, if you go onto their website, they tell you what kind of businesses that they are approving. The vast majority of them are high-tech businesses. So it might be people developing apps. It might be some kind of scientific background type business that they are looking to approve. The typical applications which were successful under the entrepreneur route, such as somebody who wants to establish a warehouse, a retail business, those kind of businesses won't qualify under the innovator route. So you're quite right. The amount is 50,000, but the focus is on the type of business. Hope that answers the question. We're taking a short break. We should be back in the next couple of minutes. See you then. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Free Legal Advice Show on British Muslim TV. I'm your host, Ilyas Bulbulya. To speak to me live on air, you can ring on the landline number which appears at the bottom of the screen, 01924 231 083, or there's a mobile number that you can send messages on as well. WhatsApp messages, fantastic, easy way to get in touch with us if you've got any questions. And I understand that legal questions are sometimes confidential. People don't necessarily want to come live on air to discuss their confidential legal matters. So a very easy way to get in touch with us is to simply send us a message on that mobile number that will come through here, and I will address your questions. Now, let's look at the next question that comes in. Quite a relevant question and an important question as well. And it relates to the EU settlement scheme. And the question that's been put to us is as follows. This is what our caller, a viewer, is saying. I understand that the EU settlement scheme is coming to an end. Who needs to apply by the deadline of 30th of June 2021? Very relevant question. Tomorrow, the EU settlement scheme for the vast majority of applicants will come to an end, as tomorrow there is a deadline. So let's look at some of the background behind this. As our viewers may be aware, there was an initial deadline for Europeans who want to come to the UK to be in the United Kingdom by 31st of December 2020. So they had to be in the United Kingdom by the 31st of December 2020. Now, under the EU settlement scheme, that was the first deadline. So if you're a European citizen and you're from you're not in the UK, you're outside the UK, you needed to have travelled to the UK by the 31st of December 2020. And so if you did that, you're protected under the EU settlement scheme. The next deadline is slightly different, and I'll go into that in greater detail after we've taken the next call. Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hello, sorry, I'm listening.
Hi. Thank you for calling. What's your question?
Okay.
Yeah, hi. You're live on air.
Wa alaikum salam, sir. Sir, my name is my name is Captain Javed
Okay.
Alvi,
Ji.
and I needed some information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
I have my own company,
Okay.
and Alhamdulillah, I have a 25 employee,
Okay.
and business going very well. And my company is VAT registered,
Okay.
and I also approved. I already apply for the sponsorship scheme, so I can employ the candidate from Pakistan, India, and whatever.
Yeah.
So what is the requirement and what is the process? I can apply the sponsorship scheme from home office.
Okay. So have you got the sponsorship license already, or you haven't applied yet? Do you have the license from the Home Office already, or you haven't applied? Hello?
No. First
So-
time apply.
Okay. So you
My
have...
company is registered. I have a 25 employee.
I understand. Okay, right. So there
I
are...
just apply.
Okay.
So what is the requirement, please?
Okay.
And how the process?
I understand. So there are a number of different stages. The first stage is that you have to apply for a sponsor license. When you apply for a sponsor license, it's an online application you make. There are documents you submit to prove that your business is genuine, such as your VAT certificate, your birth certificate, your employer's liability insurance certificate, your business bank statement. So it's an online application along with supporting documents which you submit. So that enables you to get a sponsor license. So the first step is to get the sponsor license. The cost of it, that is just over £500. Once you've got the sponsor license, you are then able to sponsor somebody to come to work for you. And that job has to be a skilled job. It doesn't have to be professional level. It's got to be skilled level. So if I give you an example, typically in a business, you might have a sales manager, you might have a buyer, you might have an accountant, you might have an IT specialist if the business is bigger. So those kind of posts will all now qualify for a skilled worker visa. So you've got the license, you then identify the post that you want to fill, and is it skilled enough? Most of these posts are now skilled enough. Once you've done that, you then ask the Home Office for a certificate of sponsorship that you want to employ employee A. If the Home Office approves it, you assign your certificate to employee A, and then that allows employee A to apply for a visa from their home country. So there are a number of different stages that you need to go through, from getting a sponsor license, identifying the post which needs to be filled, asking for a certificate of sponsorship from the Home Office for a particular person to fill that post, assigning that certificate of sponsorship to that person, and then lastly, that person applying for a visa to come to the United Kingdom to work for you. So it's difficult to go through all of that in a lot of detail, but what you need to understand is that there are many different stages to this. Sponsor license application, identifying the post, requesting a certificate of sponsorship, assigning a certificate of sponsorship to the employee, and then ultimately the employee applying for a skilled worker visa to come to work for you. Broadly speaking, that's how this scheme works. Now, obviously, I can't explain the ins and outs of every particular step in greater detail live on air, but if you've got specific questions, I can answer those for you live on air. But what I've tried to do is outline to you how it works. The process takes about 3 to 4 months to sort out. But if you've got any specific questions about the process, I can address that. Okay, so that broadly explains how the sponsor license process works. Now, this scheme has become more popular over the last few weeks or last few months. The reason for that is people are becoming aware that the Home Office has significantly made the sponsorship license scheme, the scheme whereby skilled workers can be sponsored to come to the United Kingdom. The Home Office has significantly made it easier. Made it easier in a couple of different ways. And that's why the scheme that we now have is fundamentally different from before. Easier in the sense that the level of work that somebody is now coming to do in the UK doesn't have to be at a very senior level. This was the problem with the old scheme that we had, work permit or tier 2 scheme, whatever it was called. It was too senior. So people coming to the UK under the old tier 2 scheme really were quite senior employees, generally with salaries of 30, 35, 40, 45,000 pounds. So let me take an example. So even if it's like a marketing post, you couldn't employ a marketing assistant. It would have to be a senior marketing person who is coming to join you for it to be senior enough. So what it the way it tend to work was this, that you used to have doctors, lawyers, accountants, highly skilled engineers, scientists, teachers, lecturers coming to the UK under that scheme, because it only really catered for senior individuals. Now, the fundamental change now is this, that now the skill level has been dropped. So even if you're coming to do a job which is not at that senior level, it's okay as long as it's skilled work. So let me give you some example as to what kind of jobs are now included within the scheme. So it gives you an idea about how it works. So work as a carpenter, work as a mechanic, so work as a roofer builder. They're all jobs which are skilled enough now to come within the skilled worker scheme. So there is a fundamental difference from the scheme that we had before in terms of the level of jobs. Before it was extremely difficult because only certain jobs qualified. Now you've got a much lower skill level. The second way that this scheme has changed fundamentally and made it easier for employers is that there is now no requirement to first advertise the post in the United Kingdom, look for employees in the United Kingdom. Actually, the previous requirement is that you had to look for employees throughout Europe. So you had something called the Resident Labour Market Test, RLMT, and you had to satisfy that. You had to satisfy the Resident Labour Market Test before you were able to employ somebody from outside the UK. So on the one hand, the job had to be really senior, and then secondly, you had to show that you've done everything possible to look for somebody within the UK or within Europe. You've advertised, with the job centre, you've advertised nationally, you've not been able to find anybody. And it's only now that you haven't been able to find anybody that you're using the sponsorship scheme to sponsor somebody to come and work for you. That's been done away with. There is no resident labour market test. So, even though there may be qualified people in the UK who are able to do the work that you want somebody from outside to do, it's not a problem. You don't need to satisfy the resident labour market test. You can simply say, you know what, I know employee A who's abroad in the Middle East or wherever it is, expert in IT, etc. We want to employ that person. We know we can get other people here, but we want to employ that person from abroad. As long as it's a genuine job, a genuine vacancy that needs to be filled, it's fine. So the emphasis now really is on there being a genuine vacancy that needs to be filled. If there is a genuine vacancy, you don't need to look within the UK. You can employ somebody from abroad. So it's a fundamentally much easier scheme to work with. We're taking a short break. We'll be back in the next couple of minutes. We'll see you then. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Free Legal Advice Show on British Muslim TV. I'm your host, Ilyas Bubulia. To speak to me live on air, please ring on the landline number that appears at the bottom of the screen. Alternatively, as always, you can send your questions in on the mobile number that appears there. You can send a WhatsApp message on that and it will be sent through to me here and I'll be able to address that. Okay, let's look at the next question that's come in. Question really relates to wills and probate. Question is this: can I will my property totally to my children if I have a judicial separation instead of a divorce? My property is just on my name at the moment. So the property is in the name of one individual, and the question that's been posed is, in a will, can you put the names down just of your children? Now, the difficulty with that is that it could potentially mean that on your death, the partner would lose out. And now there is a difficulty on a number of fronts, I think, here. One is if before your death there is a divorce and the partner wants to challenge the fact that the property is simply in your name and the partner wants their share. I don't know how long you've been married for, etc. But let's say married for a number of years. There's no reason why it wouldn't be a 50-50 split as far as assets are concerned upon divorce. So it may well be that even before your death, because we were looking here at making a will to see what happens with the property and the property, being distributed to your children. But what I'm looking at is the position before that. There is always a possibility that, and I don't know enough facts here, but there's always a possibility that your partner may have a claim in terms of his or her share in that property. Certainly, if it was your matrimonial home. So it may be that even before your death, you get to a stage where you're going to have to do something with dealing with your partner's share in your lifetime, which may then limit the estate that you pass on to your children. So that may well be an issue in your lifetime. Later on, if you were to pass it on to your children, I'm not a wills and probate lawyer, but I think that the issue would still be this, that if your partner is still able to claim on the estate, then the issue will be that they would be able to make a claim as if what they would be entitled to had they divorced you. So what tends to happen, and I don't know what the significance of judicial separation here is, but what tends to happen is, let's say you're married and you have a house, and the house is in your sole name, and what you say is on your death, the house will pass simply to the children, and you ignore your partner completely. Upon your death, what your partner would be entitled to, and what the court's approach is, that they should at the very least get what they would have got had they gone through a divorce in your lifetime. So you can't normally do something which takes away that right of your partner, your spouse, by simply making a will and passing the property down to your children through the will and ignoring your spouse. You can't really do that because your spouse would have a claim, and the extent of the claim, the starting point for assessing that would be what would the spouse have received had there been a divorce. So in a typical case, it may well be that the partner would have received half the property. So on your death, when the will says, my property goes to my children, the court can intervene and say, well, you know what? The partner is entitled to half that property first. Then whatever's left would then be distributed according to your wishes. So that's the position on that. I'm not too sure what the significance of judicial separation is, but that's the way it generally works. Okay, let's just go back to the question on the EU settlement scheme, which we were looking at before we took the last call. And the question related to the EU settlement scheme and the significance of the deadline that's coming up, the 30th of June deadline. Now, the issue there is this, that as some of our viewers will be aware, the initial deadline by which European nationals needed to come to the United Kingdom was the 31st of December 2020. European nationals had to be in the UK before the 31st of December 2020 in order to be eligible to be part of the EU settlement scheme, the scheme which then allows you to continue living in the United Kingdom with a view to settlement. If you, as a European citizen, came after 31st of December, you wouldn't be eligible to apply under the EU settlement scheme. You'd simply be coming to the UK as a visitor. You wouldn't be eligible to apply. To settle in the United Kingdom, you would have missed the cut-off date. The cut-off date was the 31st of December 2020. Europeans who entered before then, that date, eligible to stay, long-term, settle. Anybody who comes on or after the 1st of January 2021, they basically come simply as visitors. So that was the position with European citizens. Now, What the Home Office is now saying is that that's fine. You're here. You might have been here for a long time. Your family members might have been here. What you need to do is you need to register under the EU settlement scheme. That's what the Home Office wants you to do. And that's the deadline for tomorrow. So what they're saying is that you should register with the EU settlement scheme by the 30th of June 2021. If you don't do that, then you're potentially, if you apply later, then you're potentially applying out of time, which isn't very helpful. So the key thing here is you must, if you are here either as a European citizen or you're here as a family member of a European citizen, you must make that application by tomorrow to the EU settlement scheme. Now, the process is relatively straightforward. You simply use the app that's been designed by the Home Office, which is something that you can access on your Apple phone, on your Samsung phone, from their own app store. It's a specific Home Office approved Home Office app. You download the app and you carry out your identity check on the app. Once you've done that, once you've carried out the identity check on the app, it then takes you through the next steps that you need to follow in order to apply for your settlement scheme number. Relatively easy. You should be able to get the whole process done in the space of, let's say, within 20 to 30 minutes. But the key point is the deadline is tomorrow, the 30th of June 2021. So you need to, if you haven't done it, you do need to go online and get this done. Now, the Home Office accepts that the reality is there will be a significant number of people who don't get this done. Now, if they don't get this done, I think the reality is the Home Office is going to be flexible. They are going to say, look, if you've got a reasonable excuse as to why you didn't do it, we will allow you to do it. And I think there's going to be a grace period, a period during which the Home Office will be flexible. They will accept your explanation as to why you didn't make an application in time. They won't query it, they won't challenge you on it, they won't ask for documentary evidence. So I think the way it's going to work is initially, because there's so many people who won't have applied by the 30th of June. If you can, you must get it done. But there'll be so many people who haven't done it that the Home Office will allow some people to do it late. But there will then come a time when the Home Office will get very strict. And if you haven't done it, the Home Office, unless you have a very, very good reason, won't accept late applications. But why wait and apply late when you still have one more day to do it? You can go on the app on your phone and do it. Alternatively, if you don't want to do that, not familiar with that, you simply log onto your computer and go onto the Home Office website and make the application from there. So it's not that difficult to do. So try and get it done now. Now, if you don't do it now, the problem is this, that if you're later on applying to work, you're going to find it difficult to prove your right to work. So your European passport isn't going to be enough, or you having a card as a family member of a European national isn't going to be enough to demonstrate that you have a right to work in the UK. You will need to demonstrate that you've used one of these schemes and you have registered yourself under the EU settlement scheme. Now, there's a way it's been set up now that if you're going to work somewhere, the employer can ask for a code from you, and you go onto the Home Office website, you get a code, you give the code to the employer, and the employer is able to check whether you have in fact registered under the EU settlement scheme or not. If you have registered, all well and good. If you haven't registered, then the fact that you've got a European passport or some kind of card which says you're a family member of a European national, that isn't going to help you. You won't be able to continue working. So you must register yourself under the EU settlement scheme. It all comes to an end tomorrow, the 30th of June. If there are reasons as to why you've not been able to do it, the Home Office may accept that, but you should try and get this application in by tomorrow. Now, that's the general way this scheme works. Obviously, there are still people who are being sponsored to come to the United Kingdom from abroad. Again, if you want to sponsor a spouse to come from abroad, if you're a European citizen, you want to apply for or your spouse wants to apply to come to the UK, you've got parents who wants to come to the UK, again, the deadline for that is tomorrow. It's going to be more or less impossible for family members to come here unless it's your spouse and children. It's going to be impossible for them to come here easily after the 30th of June 2021. So for various reasons, we are now really seeing the implementation of the end of free movement. So when we as a country voted for Brexit and we wanted free movement coming to an end, this is how it's playing out. You can no longer, as a European citizen, come to work here. It's difficult for you to bring your family members in the United Kingdom as well. So that's Brexit in practice. Hope that's useful. We're shortly coming to an end. We'll be back next week on Tuesday, and inshallah, see you then.